And welcome to the School Food and Indigenous Communities panel session. I'll be your host, Zaheen Mohammed. Our tech moderator is Sandra Kirsek, and I'm happy to have on the panel today with us Scott Hall, Maria Buffalo, Lindsay MacCharles, and Clifford Gladue, each of whom I'll introduce a bit further right before they present. I'd like to acknowledge that here in Alberta, we're on Treaty 6, 7, and 8 territory, which is the traditional and ancestral land of many peoples. We should recognize that First Nations, Metis, and Inuit people have lived on and taken care of this land for generations. We show respect and gratitude towards elders and traditional knowledge keepers from across Alberta, Canada, and around the world. And we make these statements and acknowledgements to show gratitude for those whose land we reside on or visit. With that being said, a big welcome to everyone in the session, whether you're from here in Alberta or halfway across the world. I hope you enjoy the session and learn something from it. And a big thank you to our sponsors, the University of Calgary O'Brien Institute for Public Health and AA Pediatric Medical Clinic, as well as the University of Alberta's Botanical Gardens for providing us with garden passes. If you guys have any questions throughout the session, you guys can put it in the chat box or comments. We're hoping to have a question period in the last 10 minutes of the session. So if you have a burning question when someone's presenting, I'll be monitoring the chat box. And with that being said, I'll introduce our first two speakers. Our first two speakers are Scott Hall and Maria Buffalo. Scott Hall is a former teacher, now district administrator with the Massachusetts Education School Commission, or the MESC. He directs MESC's student-run breakfast and lunch program, Nanatak Mitsiwin, which serves 2,200 students, 400 staff, and involves students in cooking and preparing school meals. Also presenting, we have Maria Buffalo, who is a former student of the Mio-Wahkalaton Education Authority, now the MESC. She graduated with honors in the class of 2018. She grew up in Massachusetts and attended K-12 on reservation. She's a former film major at the U of A, now turned freelance filmmaker and multimedia artist. Big thank you for both of you for being here, and I'm excited to hear your presentation.
Thank you, Zaheen. You got the name of our program correct. First step correct. Nanatak Mitsiwin means Universal School Food Strategy. It means ultimately means Nanatak means a universal idea, and Mitsiwin is food. We adopted this name when we successfully implemented the Universal School Food Strategy. We didn't start there, but I'm going to share my screen, and I have a little PowerPoint. We're going to go through some pictures and a bit of a history of our program. Shouldn't take too long. There we go. Hold on a second. Wrong button. Share screen. Okay.
Good. You're up, Scott. That's good.
All right. So there we go. So Massachusetts Education Schools Commission is the name of our organization, and it actually legally began in July 2018. That's an amalgamation of 4 nations. Before this, the whole school food program actually started about 10,000 years ago with the Cree people of this nation that believe that it was a good thing to feed your children healthy food, right? So this has always been an idea that's always been there in the community. And for a couple hundred years, it was that food sovereignty was robbed by the Canadian government. But in an effort to build food security in the community and opportunities for our young people, we started this Ermineskin school food experiment in 2013. We had 32 EJSH students and 2 staff in the beginning. So basically the foods class, we moved them out of the home ec room and put them in the kitchen, and we successfully fed 315 students daily, breakfast, lunch, and snacks in 2013, 2014. At the middle of the year, we introduced the salad bar into the high school. It was really successful. And we eliminated the marketing of unhealthy food to our students, including removing a candy store that was set up. One of the staff members had a little business operation going, so we kiboshed that. A couple of pictures. There's an example of a typical day. We had this lineup, not very COVID friendly, so we'll get there. And me making food. So in 2014, 2015, Ermineskin Junior Senior High School food program expanded to the elementary school, adding an additional 450 students. There's an example of some of the things we make. There's a pulled pork sandwich, which is very popular, and make pretzels time to time, and bread, and an example of some of our dishes and the layout of our menu. We chose stainless steel plates for durability, and because the alternatives were plastic, right? So we didn't want to use plastic, and yeah, we've had great success with this model of food service. Oops. Into the following year, 2015, 2016, Ermineskin Junior Senior High School food program became a universal school food strategy, because we expanded fully to the kindergarten, and we included all the staff.
Is that flour on that kid's face?
Yeah, we have fun in the kitchen, right? So, we up until this point, for 3 years, we had fed the staff. We made good food and they wanted to partake, but we always felt we had to charge them for it, and we didn't like dealing with the money and collecting money, and what do we do with this, and how do we reroute it back in. And so we just, in conversation with the principal and the superintendent, we said everybody, including the teachers, should be able to access the school food program, but the stipulation is that they must eat with the kids. They couldn't take their food and then go and retreat to their silo and hide for the lunch hour. And that was very successful. So on a typical day, non-COVID day, we have students and staff in the gathering area eating together breakfast and lunch. And we built more food partnerships with local producers. So in the beginning, the first year we were pretty reliant on Cisco and GFS. And after procuring our own food, we saw at least 50% value savings. So we built local partnerships with businesses and expanded those, because we completely cut out the international food service companies like Cisco and GFS. And so for the following year, we just expanded. We did a lot more. We did some catering. We employed the students in different ways to do Christmas parties and events in the community, and on top of our regular day-to-day operations. So this is an example. This is at the elementary school. They came down in waves. So there's 450 kids. We couldn't feed them all at one time. So we had to establish some sort of flow of students in groups. And this is an example of one group. And they would come down, they would go through the salad bar, get their plate, go through the salad bar, eat. And then 15 minutes later, another group would come. This is at a powwow. Students would, every powwow, we would give away food to the students. There's an example of our salad bars and some of our kids that help in the kitchen on a daily basis, who aren't in high school, but they enjoy working in the kitchen with us. So there's that. And the following year, 2017, 2018, we started working with 8 other schools in Musqueam, as plans between the 4 nations took shape toward an amalgamation. And that officially took place in July 2018. But we began in February 2018, just building relationships with the employees that were in the schools and providing food. Mostly I just used my pickup truck. We eventually got a fleet of vehicles because it made sense. We had to get a warehouse for the amalgamation that had enough capacity to store weekly supplies that we would distribute to the 7 kitchens and 11 schools. Here's a couple of pictures of the program through those years. Students helping in the kitchen. Here's some of our food students working on the food. We've got the typical salad bar, kind of students serving themselves at the salad bar. All these things are no longer, we're not doing this anymore. It's Maria will remember these images quite well. We have just, some images of our typical day that we served in the school. So Maria, did you want to come in and tell us a little bit about your experience during this time?
I'll let you present everything first.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds good. So here's some more pictures of our kitchen, typical kitchen operations. We got example of a fruit salad. We got some students working on a lasagna. We got typical bread making day. Some nice croissants came out of the oven one day. Salad bar. Students lined up at the gathering area. This is at the high school location. Salad bar stuff and kitchen prep on a typical day. This is our warehouse operations that we repurposed a former grocery store in the Muscatries Mall, cleaned it all out and installed walk-in cooler, walk-in freezer, and we got a couple of these Isuzu delivery trucks, and we needed that in order to have the capacity to. We also are moving towards using wild game. We have a local fish farm, which is not quite wild game, but it's pretty close. We did this last year. We went out and caught a bunch of fish, and we were supposed to be hosting a UN delegation, and they canceled last minute. I think it was because of COVID. It was right before COVID began, but we like to continue using fish in the program and other wild meats. So starting March last year, of course, everybody shut down and we had to reconstruct our operations. And we still had to feed the students. So feeding students at home during a pandemic, we became hamper professionals. So this is an example of our operation. We have, we sourced boxes from some of our local partners, and an example of some of the hampers that went out. So we got a produce box and a dry goods box, and then there would be a bag of frozen meat, mostly locally grown meat, which is cool. And then here's one day in summer, we worked with the nations in other ways. So there's 4 nations and they were all doing different hamper things, but essentially we provided food for all of the operations, and we helped out here and there throughout the last 8 months of getting food into the homes. And then when school reopened, we had to restructure how we operated, so no more salad bars. Students have to eat in the classroom. They can't share food. They get essentially a bag with a box and some fruit and utensils, and so everything has to be individually portioned, and we never did that before, so we had to kind of start from scratch again. And this is an example of a dish. So we would have our components and then we would have an assembly line. We started making bagels this year, so we're getting there, not quite there, but they're pretty good. Example of some of our wild game. This is one of our principals this is a moose that she bagged, which is pretty cool. And then she brought it in and we were working on on drying meat. And sometimes accidents happen. This is kind of just fun, like an example. It's not always perfect, things go wrong. So that's about it. But that's pretty short and sweet. It's like a pretty general overview, but I'll let Maria chime in with some of her experience on her side as a student who experienced that program in the school. So I'm just going to go back to some of what she might want to recall. So I'll let you talk now, Maria.
So going to school on the res is such a different experience overall. the way it was structured and like just the way the community was. And having this food program, being able to go into school and know that you're going to be taken care of by the staff and like your well-being is, you know, accounted for as a student, like you're not just a student. And I think it's very true. Like I know some of my fellow students because poverty is very real on the res. Like I'm not gonna try lie or anything because that's just the truth. And some students know that when they come to school they'll be fed for sure. Like that is a given. And sometimes that's the only place where they'll get fed. And I think just having that option makes your education more worth it. And like Scott touched on this a bit, but food sovereignty within my nation is delicate because throughout history from colonization, Indigenous nations across Turtle Island, their societies were structured around that food, around hunting and gathering. And for instance, me, I'm Plains Cree Nahel, Treaty 6 territory, and our main food source was the buffalo. And we, as people, were nomadic because we followed that food source. So like we migrate with the buffalo, you know, north, south, however far they go, however widespread that is. And that's how kind of our societies were structured around that. And of course, through colonization, it has impeded on that nomadic lifestyle, on that, you know, like it's historical. It was basically what I'm trying to say. Like Indigenous peoples' link to food is something that's sacred. It's in our teachings, and it is the very basis to how we like operate as a community, how we take care of one another. And I think this program is an example of that. So is there anything else, Scott? What else can I talk about?
You're
You
muted,
muted.
Scott.
I have a question. What did you do?
Yeah.
Did you help in the program, Maria?
No, I did not. When I went to school, I wasn't a food student. I focused on language revitalization. So my options class was Cree, and some students, a lot of my friends were in the foods program, and it was pretty sweet.
Okay, thank you.
I remember you in the lunch line every day, though.
Yeah, it was wild.
So she experienced that side of it, which is cool. Yeah.
We'll also have a question period in the last 10 minutes. So if you guys want to expand on anything, we can also talk there. Thank
For
you
sure.
guys both for sharing your experiences and telling us about the program. Our next presenter is Lindsay McCharles, who I'll introduce a little bit about. She's originally from Treaty 1 territory. She was raised in Winnipeg, Manitoba. She's a visitor to Treaty 7 territory, where she works as a registered dietitian with Renfrew Educational Services. She's had the privilege of working full-time on the Stoney Nakoda First Nation through Stoney Health Services since 2018. As a pediatric dietitian, she works closely with children and families in the community, and as well as the Nakoda Elementary School and Morley Community School. So a big welcome to Lindsay McCharles, and whenever you feel ready, you can start your presentation.
Awesome, thank you. I will just share my screen here. I just have a couple pictures to share.
Yep, you're up, Lindsay.
Okay. It's working now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, my name's Lindsay, and just a little bit of background on the community and myself. So the Stoney Nakoda First Nation is located about 50 kilometers west of Calgary, between Calgary and Canmore, just off and around Highway 1. And The community has two schools that are situated on reserve, the Nakota Elementary School and the Morley Community School, and each have about 300 to 500 students enrolled at the school. Both schools have a hot lunch program, as from my experience, standard on reserve, and that includes breakfast, lunch, and 2 snacks, so about 50 to 60% of the child's intake in any given week. Both schools have that industrial kitchen as well as their own cooks from the community that prepare the meals for the students. So my role is through Stony Hill Services and Renfrew Educational Services. Renfrew is my employer and they're an agency based out of Calgary, but we've been contracted on Nation for the last 2.5 years. And in my role, I get to do both clinical and population health. So that's both some counseling one-on-one with families, as well as working in the community setting and running a handful of and a wide variety of programs. We work very, very closely with our community health promoters, which are a part and very key part of our nutrition team. So to start off, some of our nutrition programs. So what we have and what we run is called the Healthy Eating Initiative, which is run by myself, as well as another second dietitian we have on reserve. Her name's Paige Thompson, who's covering for a mat leave of Myra Regan, Myra was the one who secured a lot of our funding back in October of 2018. So it was right around when I was starting the position. So the three of us now work with 4 community health promoters. We have Josh Mark, Kiana Daniels, Japheth Coquitz, and Meldrick Bigstoney, and they're all from the community and work quite closely with their community. Focusing on the school programs that we run is the images that and the programs I was going to highlight today, but there are a variety of other things we do around food security and just like diabetes and adult chronic disease management, promotion, things like that. So the basis of all of our programs are based kind of to use this WSTICH Healthy Living Guide that we have created. So this was created right at the start of our funding and it was created with community elders. So Myra and I had seen Tsuut'ina First Nation, which is located right on the border of Calgary, create their own healthy living guide as well, what they call the Guja. And it is created, it looks like a honeycomb. So we thought maybe with Turtle Island being like a significant story, we could make something similar to this honeycomb, but make it a turtle. And when we brought our elders into a focus group kind of learning session, our elders were like, when was the last time you saw a turtle in Morley? No one's going to relate to this turtle idea that you guys have. So they suggested the teepee, which is definitely a much more appropriate and relatable image for the community, and they're focusing on the young and the youth to relate to. And then we've built in Canada's food guide as well as some other key factors in health for the community. So that being like the family support within the teepee, in the door of the teepee, as well as community and tradition as the flags at the top of the teepee, being like those really staples in health and wellness in the community. After Canada's food guide was updated in February of 2019, we added in the plate method at the bottom, since that's really the focus around nutrition recommendations federally right now, and then as well as how important and key it is for access to medical equipment for the community, which can be a barrier for a lot of people's health. So once we created this WSTICH with our community elders, we've used it and integrated it into a number of our programs, especially our school food programs. So these are a couple of our community health promoters. Last Christmas, we've had 2 others join the team. So myself and Paige are pictured here, and we work quite closely with them on a daily basis. So the first program I wanted to talk about was our NSTEP program. So NSTEP is across Alberta and BC in specific school divisions or specific schools, and it stands for Nutrition Students, Teachers, Exercising with Parents. And we worked with Deb Heimer, similar, she's worked with the Tsuut'ina First Nation to really personalize it to the community. And it's not really the same that NSTEP would be in the city setting, but it's very, the fundamental curriculum pieces are still there, but personalized to the community. So what we have done is create our N-STEP activity books. This program is focused at the elementary school, which is K to 6. So starting with kindergarten, we've now completed, through COVID, it was kind of our work from home project, all 6 of our activity books, which starts with introducing our Stitch, which is that living guide. So it goes through it and introduced to the character. And then we have our level or grade 1, which is learning from the animals. And again, one of our other characters, Snow and Sky are their names. And then caring for Mother Earth, which is the grade 2. We're starting to call them levels instead of grades. And then level 4 is caring for my body, back to Sky. And level 5 is diving deeper into carbohydrates. And then level 6, we are with Snow again, and she introduces diabetes and diabetes prevention. So each of these books have a number of Stony words that we've used with the Stony teachers at the elementary school. So for example, to know is meat. Ina Makachi is Mother Earth in the Stony language. So the Stony teacher really integrated and advanced based on whatever grade level the Stony language in the books. And then all the drawings that you see, like all the characters, were completely drawn by a community member. His name is Keanu to Young Men, and he's kind of our go-to cartoonist. So he has done such an awesome job creating these or bringing these characters to life. And then there's a number of different activities throughout each book as well. So that might be drawing our plates at breakfast, lunch, and dinner, or it might be going outside and finding animal tracks or different parts of nature, depending on the grade level and what they kind of do in different curriculums. So that kind of, it takes that end step where it's not just health class, but it's really curriculum based, and puts them in an activity books that we're able to take some of the load off the teachers, and they can just kind of go through the books with their students and with our health promoters. So N-STEP's a super fun activity that we do on a monthly basis. Obviously with the pandemic, we've had to change things. Our community is taking a very strong approach in protecting our elders. So we are not following the Alberta education scenario 1 kind of setup. We're in more of a scenario 2. So the kids were in 2 cohorts and going to school 2 days a week. And then about 50% of the students are still opting to do just virtual online. So the schools are very quiet right now, and a lot of it's taken virtually. So our community health promoters, this is Josh, he goes, and each month we record him reading a couple pages of the story, and then our other health promoters jump in and do the activities so the students can follow along, and it's all posted to their Google Classrooms. So they're able to do N-STEP that way this year. So it's different, but it's also super fun. One of our other major programs is our healthy food bags. So this is where we come together and pack up a bunch of, I guess, HelloFresh style bags. But before we send it home, each of the classrooms comes to the kitchen and does the hands-on cooking piece with us and samples the food. And that way they get to know if they like it or how they might want to alter it. They get to learn those food skills, those food handler skills. And they get to really take the lead and have that responsibility piece of cooking this meal when they take it home to their families. So yeah, this program runs for grade 3s through grade 9. So we do go over into the junior high school age to deliver this program. And here's one of our, I think this is our grade 4 classroom from last Christmas. And they got, last Christmas, I think we did a ham or pork tenderloin, and they kind of did it in a cranberry sauce. And we always try to try something new each month. So then they take home, at the end of the day, they get these bags with the frozen meat and take it on the bus and take it right home. So it's great. And the kids, I think, have learned a lot around food literacy and those food handler kind of skills. Yeah, so that's a super awesome one that we run for 4 months. We're still figuring out how it might be able to look with COVID-19, and it'll just be we're hoping to start in January. So we're just waiting to see what things look like in January. The next one that I wanted to highlight was our food forest and community greenhouse. So our food forest, you can see kind of in the background, we have, I think, 9 beds out here, as well as surrounding the playground, many perennial plants. So that's pretty much every berry plant that can grow in our environment. There's an apple tree, a pear tree, a crabapple tree, some herbs, and then we get to do the annual stuff in the beds there. And then we do also have a community greenhouse that we do 2 programs out of this. Oh, yeah. So we do a little bit of work with some of the classrooms. The grade 4 and grade 7 classrooms are kind of our target audience for getting our seedling started and doing all the work before they go on summer vacation. And with COVID, they did some of their own gardening at home that their teacher took the initiative in doing. And then we just kind of did what we could with our community garden and greenhouse this year. Our focus for this is definitely increasing community engagement, and that's our food forest. This one here was only opened in July of 2019, so it's only been a little over a year. And so some people, or much of the community, doesn't even know that this space exists and that it's open and it's theirs to care for and utilize the harvest and everything. So definitely moving forward, this program is a focus that needs some love and attention, and really giving that capacity piece back to the community where they can use these spaces to increase local food and their own skills around all of this. Yeah, and then the last thing that we do work with the schools a little bit with is around menu planning. So the high school, we kind of have taken the initiative to build relationships with the schools, but we let the cooks reach out to us when they want to do stuff. So right now there's no students in the schools on Fridays. So we're working with our high school cooks and trying to make homemade granola bars and homemade muffins and homemade different types of, like, primarily the focus is healthy snacks for their hot lunch program. And we'll do a little bit of menu planning work with them as well. That pretty much wraps up my involvement with the school food programs. And yeah, I'm happy to chat or answer any questions at the end.
Awesome. Thank you for that presentation and sharing all of those wonderful resources. Our next presenter is Clifford Gladue. He is a member of the Whitefish Lake First Nation 459, and he's the Food Services Manager for the Kitaskinau Tribal Council Education Authority. The authority oversees 6 schools within Whitefish Lake First Nation, Woodland Cree First Nation, Lubicon Lake Band, Loon River First Nation, and Peerless Trout First Nation. He's helped the 6 schools to eliminate processed foods and has helped turn a vision to offer traditional meals in school into a reality. They've worked with elders in the community as well as public health officers. Thank you for being here, Clifford, and whenever you feel ready, you can start your presentation.
Okay, can you guys see that?
We
Yeah.
can, Clifford, you're good to go.
Okay. Yeah, my name is Clifford Gladue. I'm the food services.
I think you're cutting out,
First
Clifford.
formed. They didn't have no food service program, so a year after it was formed, they came to me and asked me for help because I had worked in other places like this restaurant. So the KTC was formed through the vision of leadership and the elders. The First Nation schools in Canada to offer traditional foods. This took me about 9 months to get this going. Like, we were able to work with the public health officers at of Indigenous Service Canada, and we took control of our delivery. And then I couldn't take control of what was coming in, and because I wanted the freshness of the produce and the meat. So we took over the system, and when we first started, we purchased a delivery truck. And then we started getting
Clifford, we're having a hard time hearing you. I'm wondering if we should do a one-tap mobile instead of the Wi-Fi.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
It,
we're
it
picking up
sounds
now.
clear, but it cuts out every now and then.
Can you hear me?
Intermittently, Clifford.
I'm not sure, Sandra, if you know a better way to help hear Clifford here.
Why don't you go to a couple questions, Zaheen, and I'm going to try and call Clifford and see if we can't do something via the one-tap mobile. Clifford, I'm going to put my cell number, because I don't know if you still have it into the chat.
Okay. So I'm gonna look through the chat box for now. And let's see. I see that earlier Susan asked, I think it was during Scott's presentation, she asked who helped pack the boxes for the program, Scott? Or if you want to jump in, Susan, and ask your question yourself as well.
Yeah, I wanted to know when you said that the boxes were packed, who did the boxes, Scott?
It was a collaborative effort between the Four Nations and MESC, Muscogee Education Schools Commission. So we had 22 staff members in our department
It was staff.
that assisted, but only where needed. So our team, we were able to really train them, and our guys were, our people were really efficient at packing boxes. But some of the other nations, they wanted to do their own thing. So we supported them, and we sometimes helped them pack boxes, portion boxes, but it was mostly the nations that did the packing. But periodically our team jumped in, and like we were really like an elite force of hamper production. So
Mhm.
Okay, I had another question. Are the resources that were
Okay.
mentioned earlier available online, or how do you, that's for Lindsay?
Okay.
Actually, sorry, I think Clifford, are you back?
Nope.
I heard him for a second. Okay, we can continue with the questions for now, and I think Sandra will let us know if she's connected with him.
Susan, the resources are not currently online anywhere, although our health center website was just updated. So I know they do want us to put a lot of these up on there. They are just not uploaded yet, but I would be happy to share electronic
They're
versions
great
of them.
resources. My goodness, they're terrific.
Yeah, they're super bright and colorful and beautiful, and the artists are so talented.
Thank you.
Lindsay, would you be comfortable with us sending it out through like our newsletter or like through our GFSA network to different members?
Yeah,
Awesome.
that for sure. They are quite tailored to the Stoney First Nation, but I'm sure there's great opportunities to collaborate and utilize them in different ways. So I'd be happy
Awesome.
to share.
Thanks.
Okay. One question I wanted to ask was what are some challenges in developing and starting up these programs, and as well as maintaining them in the Indigenous communities? And this is open to anybody on the
I think mine is. I had sent that presentation to somebody there.
Are you in contact with Sandra right now, Clifford?
Mhm.
I believe you
Okay.
can. Okay.
Right.
Okay. I believe while Clifford's still setting that up, if Scott or Lindsay, if you want to speak on that question.
Sure. One of the biggest hurdles in starting a program like a universal school food strategy in our communities is paradigm shifts. So when I say that, I mean the staff and the students and the parents and the leaders in the community all have an opinion about food and what food is and what we should be providing our students. And it takes time for people to learn the facts, right? So there's an easy way of feeding kids, and then there's a more challenging, better way, more nutritionally dense way, and that takes some time to change paradigms, right? So when we first introduced the salad bars, people said, there's too much waste. This isn't going to work. You're not going to get these kids to eat healthy food.
Enter your meeting ID followed by pound. Appuyez sur le 0 pour choisir français.
Oh, sorry.
So when we first introduced the salad bars, people were critical of them, that they wouldn't be effective. And it's a matter of time. It's like advertising, right? So it's the same principle of exposure to healthy food over time changes paradigms. So just the visual experience of seeing healthy food in a salad bar on a day-to-day basis will change the mindset of young people, and also the staff that are involved in it. They start to see, well, it does work. Like, and so it's really that was the most challenging part is getting people on board with changing the nature of where we get our food from. So we're not buying from Cisco and GFS convenience foods anymore. We're making everything from scratch with whole ingredients that are grown mostly locally as possible. And that's so logistical challenges and changing mindsets in the communities. But it can be done everywhere. It's not just Indigenous communities where we have these challenges, but they're definitely easily overcome with tenacity.
Yeah.
God, I kind of have a building question on that, I guess, like any wisdom or insight in like kind of how to bridge that, because I know like myself and in our community we feel that now, like with some of the programs we look to introduce, there's resistance because of waste, or like great concern around waste. So how do you kind of like allow them to visually see that for and expose and market it for a period of time before you get that buy-in? Was there like steps you took to reduce food waste or?
Yeah, so it's initially you have to work with everybody. So it's you take the criticisms in and then you address them professionally and say, listen, we're on the same page. We want, this is the end goal and we don't know how to get there exactly, but we're going to work together and make it work. So essentially coming down with, this is a vision of what we want and we don't know how to get there, but that's what we have to do. We have to get like Susan's 4 principles. I think it was 4 or 5 principles of what a universal school food strategy should be. They're vague in their like they're kind of general, but in their application, but they're very specific in their vision, right? So if you go to a community and say, this is the ultimate goal is to feed students healthy, nutrient-dense food every single day. Well, how do we get from here where we are to there? And it'll look different in every community, but it's a collaborative, right? So it's not shutting out these people who have concerns, it's involving them in the conversation about a solution, not spending too much time on the problem, but just say, okay, I understand where you're coming from, but how do we get there then? What are your suggestions? And then invite them into that conversation.
I'd also just like to double check with Clifford if he's feeling ready to present.
Yeah, I think he's still he's having trouble connecting with the one-tap mobile feature. And so Clifford, now that I'm sharing your PowerPoint, that might not use so much of your computer base. Would you like to just keep your camera off? I've unmuted you now again. Oh, Clifford, are you there?
If he's not there yet, we can do a couple more of the audience questions.
Yeah, go ahead, Z.
So we have one that asks for both Scott and Lindsay, if do you have a steady and secure source of funding, and do you worry about sustainability over the next 3 to 5 years, or are you feeling more hopeful over time?
Our funding has come from a variety of places.
Hello?
I'm hopeful in that there are lots of streams and avenues to access funding. It's definitely looking better and better each year. Our largest chunk of funding does come from Jordan's Principle, which we have been grateful for and have really utilized. And it has opened so many doors and opportunities, like creating these resources. So I think there is some changes going on within Jordan's Principle, but at the end of the day, we are fairly confident in the programs that we run and that our funding will be renewed year after year.
Principle did you mention? What principle did you mention?
Jordan's Principle.
Okay, good, thank you.
Zaheen, I think we're gonna give this a try again. If that's okay, Clifford's gonna just try and unmute and try to present.
Okay.
We may have lost him.
Lindsay, you might want to explain Jordan's Principle.
Sure. Should I do it now, Zaheen, or are we giving Clifford?
Let's see. Let's give Clifford a couple seconds here. Actually, let me send him a message. Actually, yeah, you can explain it.
Okay, so Jordan's Principle is a federally funded initiative. It's a child's first initiative that prioritizes Indigenous children having right to funding no matter where it's supposed to come. I know, so it's from a family or a child in Manitoba named Jordan River Anderson, who basically his quality of life was quite compromised because of the inability of the provincial and federal government to agree on who should be paying for his healthcare. So now this mandate has come across that Jordan's Principle funding will cover it, and after the fact it's worked out who it is that's actually paying for it, be it provincial or federal. So it's a very large fund that comes down from Ottawa. And I think someone in Laura White in the chat shared, I would expect it to be a link to more information on Jordan's Principle. And from my understanding, it's been in effect since about 2015 through 2017 was kind of when it started up, and now it's got the ball rolling.
Can I just mention some items regarding funding? In the beginning of our school food program, it was because our principal at the time at the one school, Ermineskin Junior Senior High School, he was a new principal and he was worried about running out of money. So they had about $70,000 left in March 1st at the beginning of the new fiscal year. And so they basically invested it for the following year's school food program. And at that time, Indigenous students across Canada were getting a fraction of like 2/3 of what a public school student would receive in terms of nominal role and how schools are funded, right? And it wasn't until 2 years ago that the province of Alberta under the NDP decided to top up school funding to match public schools, but we were still running a school food program with no extra grants, using education dollars. It was just priorities. The community prioritized it. So right out the gate, the money didn't go to the band and then go through the band filter. It went to the school board. It went directly from INAC to the school board. And then the school board said, we were going to prioritize feeding the kids. So they gave us a budget, which worked out to about $1 a day for food costs, not including operational costs at this point. It wasn't until we expanded to 11 schools across a whole district that we needed operational costs and include operational costs. So we calculated that, but it's still part of the education dollars that we're getting. We're not getting additional funding or grants. I just wanted to say that.
I wanted to ask Clifford one more time if he's able to join.
Yeah,
I'm
we're
so sorry
gonna
for the
give-
technical difficulties. Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to give this a go. So Clifford will unmute himself and he will try to present. And if that doesn't work, I'm going to do a cell phone relay.
Hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Is that better now?
I think it's sounding better. I think originally it was cutting out every now and then, but we'll see how it goes.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna hang up the phone, Clifford.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead. Tell me when to switch your slide.
Right. Can you go down? Sandra? Yeah. Okay. KTCEA was formed through the vision of the leadership.
I think it is still cutting
Trained
out.
school cooks. Okay, we had
Hi, Clifford, I'm just going to mute your, Kate, we're going to talk through my computer. You go ahead.
Creating the school menus. What I did was, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, creating school menus. I partnered with the cooks from each school of the 6 schools. I gathered all their menus and we went over the menus. What I wanted to do was remove all the processed foods for the menu. So, but what we did was we slowly eliminated things. It took about 2 years to eliminate all the processed foods on the menu. And none of the schools had a breakfast program. So what I did was I brought in a breakfast program for each school. And we usually serve that between 8:30 and 9 o'clock. So that gives time for each student that come to school late, because we start school at 8:50. So we try to feed everybody as much as we can. Can you go to the land-based learning camps? In the land-based learning camps, we take each class from each school. So like we have 6 schools, so we take grade 5s and grade 6s together. Here at this camp, they learn how to hunt and skin. What they learn to skin, there's a moose, deer, duck, rabbit, and fish. We usually bring in elders from each community to come help teach the kids. The students also learn the need to provide for themselves in the future at these camps. The elders also tell stories to the students in camps. So you could see some kids there doing the moose hide, and those students there, they really enjoyed doing that, and they didn't want to leave the camps, because the camps are usually about 5 days. So we had a hard time getting some students to leave the camp to go back to their schools and go home. Can you go to the next slide?
Is this the right one, Clifford?
The Alberta First Nations Food Sovereignty Declaration. One of my elders gave me this form, this paper, that the Alberta First Nations Food Sovereignty Declaration, where wild game is recognized source of traditional food, cultural enrichment, and nutrition. So I had spoke to 8 elders about the Food Sovereignty Declaration, and I told them that I wanted to bring this forward to KTCEA, to the schools, because I wanted to start feeding traditional foods in the schools. So all those elders were on board, and then we presented it to the board members. So all the board members were in agreement. So they told me to start working on this traditional foods in schools. So we formed a little group with the elders and some leadership from each community. So go to the next slide. The community program.
Yep.
So with this community program, we had to receive consent from leadership and elders per community to provide uninspected wild game on the menu. So what we did was we went to each First Nation. We met with the leadership, the chief and council, and each community had their own elders senate. So we spoke with them, and they told me to go ahead with this uninspected wild game to be on the menu. So for the wild game, what we only been getting was the moose. With the other wild games such as bison, elk, deer, fish, we brought that in with our partner, Northern Food Service, and they get that from the Calgary area. So they partnered with somebody from Calgary. So we get the wild game through them. What we had was Gordon Food Service and Cisco, but they couldn't provide the wild game. So I started shopping around for another food provider that could help us out in that area. So Northern Food Service had a partnership with Denendeh from Northwest Territories. So we fall under Denendeh because that was a First Nations company. So they helped us get the wild game. So the wild game should be processed and prepared at has been inspected and approved by environmental public health officers. So each school had to get their kitchens inspected, and they had to provide where they were going to store their wild game in the coolers. So when they did that, they got a certificate of approval for handling the wild game. So that certificate of approval was the first of its kind in Canada. So they had to post that up in their kitchens where everybody could see it. Next slide. So we had to create forms for the hunters. This form, it helped us to know who had killed the moose and where it was killed. They had to provide their status card number, their and what zone they killed the moose, and the temperature of the moose. They had to write that down. So this form, when they fill it out, it was only for the KTC file that this form was never shared with anybody else. So the hunter information was there. They had to provide their name. The hunter number is the person that went out. So say if I went out, that would be hunter number 1. And the H1, it would be the hunter number 1. And if they provided 1 or 2 moose, they put H101 or H102. So they have to provide the phone and the community they're from, their treaty number, the address, the hunting area, the hunting date, the harvest time, the outdoor temperature, and the type of animal, and the male or female. Next slide. So this is how our labeling information was put on our packaged meat that was on it and inspected. So they have to put the carcass number and the hunter number on it, the type of animal, and the date of harvest. So there's an example there. It says KTC EA H101 on inspected moose meat, and the date it was harvested was September 5th, 2020. Receiver and storage, this is where once they kill that moose, they would have to bring it to our warehouse where I would inspect it. So the hunter would have to bring it, and I give this form to them to fill it out, because sometimes their forms wouldn't be accurate, like not the same, and the number of packaged meat that they brought in. So we really have to keep track of how much meat comes in wild game. So the name of receiver and inspector, that would be me once I receive it. Sometimes there were a couple times I had to reject the meat, but when I reject the meat, they would either give it to the elders or they would keep it. Because there's a certain way they would have to cut the meat for the schools. See, and then declaration agreement is where they have to go through each step and check mark the box that they have done. So they would sign it, and then I would sign it. The next slide. The school information form is this is for the school. Once we when it's time for traditional meals, I would send the meat 3 days before the traditional meal day. So the driver would have to fill out the form of the meat they got at the warehouse, and they would have to provide the date they picked up and the time they picked up. And then they'll take it to the school, and the head cook would have to fill out the school facility area of the time it was received. So the next slide. See, that's how it looks when it's a little bigger. So the name of the delivery driver, the time they left the facility, and the address, and the school name. Some of the cooks were really on board with this because they said that there was too much paperwork, but I need to keep track of everything because I had to send all these paperwork to Indigenous Service Canada because this was a pilot project that we had started last year. So, and there's our last slide is there's a moose to encourage our children to have dreams, to expose them to the possibilities through education. That's my slide.
Thanks, Clifford.
Thank you so much, Clifford. I know there was so much technical adversity, but I'm really glad we got to hear your presentation. I had no idea about all the processes involved in getting wild meat and game meat to schools. So thank you so much for that. I want to let everyone know that all of the other sessions have been delayed to 11:10. So if you have any questions for any of the panel members, you guys can still ask. Yeah. And then something I might ask to all the panel members is, what is an area, if there is an area, then in your school community that you would want to change in terms of allowing your school food program to be more successful? What would it be? And it can be from like any angle, any aspect. Yeah.
I just have a quick question for Clifford, if I may.
I'll go ahead.
Clifford, how much wild meat were you able to integrate into your program this year?
This year we were limited because of COVID. So there was a lot of hunters that didn't really want to go out there. So we were having trouble getting moose meat in for this school year.
Okay.
So I'd say about this year we had about probably about 4 so far, 4 moose.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And that's a significant amount of protein for the program. That's awesome.
On that, kind of building on Zaheen's question, we are working with Clifford, and last year we had approached our board of elders, our circle of elders, with Clifford's model of wild meats integration into school food, and it was approved. And about the same day we were talking about COVID, so it's all been delayed because of this. But we did get a vacuum pack machine, and we're ready to start, you know, doing what Cliff is doing. But that's what we'd like to change to our program. That's one of the changes that are coming up.
Awesome.
I just also want to point out that the implementation of wild game into school foods is a huge benefit to Indigenous communities, because in some areas, not only is it important for nutrition and health, and the animals are medicine, but it's just been denied for generations, and it's just nice to see that it's a welcome addition to the program.
I absolutely agree. I think when I went to school, and I remember that being one of the highlights, is being able to have, food from the land that we prepared ourselves. And that was so special.
I'd like to, if anybody needs to get going to another session, they can go, or if you have more questions, we can stay for a bit longer. For those of you that have to leave, I hope you enjoy the rest of the sessions and have a great day. Thank you thank you to all of the panelists who come. I know you guys have really busy schedules, so thank you for coming down to present. And I guess if there's like a last minute question for anybody in the audience, feel free to ask. You can unmute yourself.
There is a question in the chat, Zaheen. Terry's asking Clifford, is there any opportunity to purchase wild meat for people outside of your community?
No, because we're not allowed to do that right now. But you could purchase bison and elk and deer through Northern Food Service, and they would be able to help you. But as per KTCEA, we were not allowed to do that.
Thanks, Clifford.
Okay. If there's not any other audience questions, I think we can wrap it up.
Sorry, Clifford, I should sort of interrupt. What was the name of that company?
Northern Food Service.
And they're based out of Northwest Territories?
They have an office in Edmonton.
Northern Food Service.
Yeah, but their head office is in Yellowknife.
Okay, and they have a distribution point in Edmonton then?
Yes, they do.
Okay, and it's elk, deer, and what else did you say?
Bison, and they have all kinds of salmon also.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right. There's no other questions, then I think we can end the session here. And again, a big thank you to everybody for coming out tonight.